Hello and welcome to my Russian Grand Prix driver predictions, the series in which you guys, the audience, can get involved following the link in the top line of the description. This is the series in which I'll be answering a couple of questions which we'll briefly go over in a little moment's time, which you guys can do exactly that also in order to get involved in the Audience Prediction Championship. Now, after an absolutely stellar Italian Grand Prix and quite frankly a stellar season of Formula 1, we head into Sochi, which is, it's never usually the best Grand Prix, but if anything that this season has been so far, that didn't really make much sense, Sochi could be quite interesting. So without further ado, let us jump on in to the Russian Grand Prix predictions for qualifying, a bold statement, and also the race. So how exactly does this series work? By following that link in the top line of the description, you'll be asked for your top 5 for qualifying, your top 5 for the race, and a bold statement throughout the entire weekend. Now, just a few ground rules for this. You can make as many submissions as you like to this. I will just choose your most recent submission as your final submission. You can make these submissions all the way up to the start of Q1. The moment qualifying starts, that is when the submissions close. Any that are made after that, I will not include. So if you want to make them on Thursday, like this video here, like I will be making mine on, by all means do so. But if you want to wait until some of the practice sessions, and more importantly practice 3, before qualifying starts, then by all means, wait for that. And then finally, for example, grid penalties, like Max Verstappen's incoming 3-place grid drop for this Grand Prix, just ignore them. Completely ignore them. I'm not going off of the start grid, I'm going off of where they finish in qualifying. So if he ends up qualifying in P1 on pole position, but he starts in P4, it will be P1 that I'll take for your top 5. But if there's anything else that you want to know of, then please just let me know in the comments down below. But then going over the brief little scoring system that we've got for these 3 questions, you will receive 2 points for a correct driver in their correct position inside your top 5, and 1 point for a correct driver but in the incorrect position in your top 5. Exactly the same for the race, and then 5 bonus points for your bold statement if it is remotely correct. There is of course going to be lots of leeway, and everything is all marked by myself. And briefly just going over the current leaderboard at the moment, it is still Evan Darcy who stretches their lead to 15 points over Joe Bischoff throughout this whole season so far. Myself on 153 points, 1 point behind Arturo Salazar. Then we move on into the people that haven't entered into every single round of the season. People at 94 like Elian or Torst as well, 92 Leroy. Then people in the second half of this leaderboard, we have people like Jif A, Boris Rabat, White, River, Kevin, Callum, and then of course we do have a second set of leaderboards for the people that have only entered into a couple of the races so far, with the second half of this leaderboard looking like this. Now, to make it fair to those people who have not entered into every single round, on the video that gets released on Sunday where I'll be reacting to the race, I will update this table to include the average score for the rounds that you have entered. So if you see yourself high up in that average points leaderboard, you know you are predicting extremely well. But with all of that out of the way, let us jump on into my predictions, and we start with qualifying. My top 5 for qualifying, I've gone fairly conservative, and I've gone for a Valtteri Bottas pole position. Mainly because Sochi is another Mercedes track, and they were absolutely ominous in Italy. Yes, the race didn't quite go their way, but their speed was immense. So I can almost guarantee that that's going to translate into Sochi. And we know that Bottas loves this track, and he usually beats his teammates, and especially Lewis Hamilton in the past couple of years at this track as well. So I'm expecting Valtteri Bottas to get pole position, with Lewis Hamilton claiming that front row spot alongside him, Max Verstappen in P3 and Sergio Perez in P4. It's a fairly conservative and fairly boring prediction for the top 4, but top 5, I've gone for Vettel. I really think that Aston Martin might just click, as it's not obviously the copycat Mercedes, but it's based off of the Mercedes, which the philosophy really works at this circuit. So I genuinely think in the hands of Vettel, it can actually do extremely well and get through into Q3 and be P5 in qualifying. And from the qualifying top 5, we will now take a look at my race top 5. And once again, I've gone fairly conservative, a Lewis Hamilton victory. Victory number 100 that I was expecting to come 2 weeks ago, with Valtteri Bottas completing the podium, and I am assuming this to be a teammate swapperoo, as I'm expecting Bottas to just have that little edge over Hamilton, because this is Bottas's track, this is like his domain, he loves it. And much like 2018, I'm expecting there to be a small little team order doodah, if obviously they qualify 1 and 2, which they may not even do. Yeah, that's what I'm expecting in the race, and then Lewis Hamilton to just waltz off into the distance. Then completing the podium, I'm expecting there to be Max Verstappen, and it's going to be extremely close. The Red Bulls usually struggle a little bit, and yes, he does have his 3-place grid drop, so perhaps Lando Norris in P4 that I have predicted could get involved and could perhaps bag himself another podium, depending on how difficult it is for Max Verstappen to cut through the field after starting 3 places behind where he normally would, which means he's probably going to end up behind some of the McLarens, maybe even Aston Martin. A Ferrari could even get involved, who knows. And then completing the top 5, I've gone for Sebastian Vettel. I don't believe that Sergio Perez is going to make it into the top 5 for the race. I think something's going to happen. This race pace this year just hasn't really been fantastic. No one's race pace in that second Red Bull since Ricciardo has been fantastic. So I'm expecting Perez to slightly drop off and perhaps be involved in a little incident, and Max Verstappen to get the more prioritised strategy to sort of negate the grid drop. Negate the grid drop. I don't know why I thought so hard about that. Now, obviously, with me making these predictions for the video to release on Thursday, it is currently Tuesday at the moment. The Grand Prix is still quite a ways away, and we haven't had any confirmed reports if Max Verstappen is going to be having his engine penalties, because he could well have his engine penalties at this Grand Prix, which could bugger me over quite a little bit. But I'm going to stick to myself and stick to my rules for myself, that I will not be updating my own predictions. What I make before any practice sessions start, that is my final set of predictions. Which leads me on into my bold statement for this weekend, and that is that Aston Martin are going to score more points than Ferrari. Now, this bold statement can literally apply to any portion of the weekend. It can apply to practice, it can apply to qualifying, it can apply to the race, it can apply to all of it. Who knows? That is completely up to you. And again, how specific you want it, that is also up to you. So you could make it as vague as possible, that there will be a crash. That's it. That could be your statement. And if there's a crash in practice, qualifying, or the race, you will score those 5 bonus points. But then you just have to know in your head that I chose a very moderate sort of statement. Why am I struggling so much with English today? Whereas if you set yourself a slightly more unrealistic bold statement, like a particular driver will outscore a driver by exactly 6 points. Could happen. It will happen at some point during this race, but if you were to get those 2 drivers correct, you'll feel a bit more pleased with yourself that you managed to guess something a little bit bold. And there we go, there are my predictions all done and dusted for the Russian Grand Prix. Please let me know in the comments down below what you thought of my set of predictions, and then also what you are predicting as well. And make sure to follow that link in the top line of the description, submitting as many times as you like, all the way up until the start of qualifying. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.